As the union budget comes, is announced in the next few days, we have with us Dr. Gulati to speak on various issues related to agriculture rural sector. Welcome to the show, sir. To start with you first, what is your expectations from the union budget this time?
I would say there is already a lot going to be in the budget. The biggest items for agriculture and food sector are going to be food and fertilizer subsidy. And that's going to eat away quite a bit of resources of the union budget. That would be one. Other things, one can expect some changes and hopefully some, credit. Normally they say the target is 18 lakh crores or whatever. So agriculture credit will be pumped up. That's through NABARD largely. There could be already agriculture infrastructure fund that was announced, and if something more can be done, FPOs, that entire process in which already the things were on, maybe they would be enhanced a bit. Last thing that I would expect is, because the resources are quite tight, whether PM Kisan would be augmented or not from 6,000 to something better for the farmers. So these are broadly the things. I don't expect any revolutionary changes in the budget for agriculture.
Do you think the overall, after this repeal of the laws, the repeal of the acts, the overall appetite for anyone to take any big reforms in the agriculture has gone down or diminished now?
Much of the agriculture policy in the past had been focused on the production side. These three reforms were more on the marketing side. Now, somehow, the narrative that was created is it is not in the interest of the farmer. Now they have withdrawn the laws. So any major marketing reforms are out of the question, out of the window now. And I don't think any government would touch that in the coming years. At least one will have to. My only feeling is the demand for MSP being made legal can be even regressive if the government accepts that. It will have major implications for the economy, and I don't think that's the right way to go ahead.
You say that MSP making it legal is a very problematic thing, which many people do agree, many people don't agree. There are a lot of numbers, theories floating around that what will happen to the sector if this MSP is legalized. One section says that it means that government will end up buying everything. Second section says that it also means that the private sector will be mandated to purchase at a certain rate. So these are two different things. What do you think can happen if MSP is some sort of guarantee is given? Supposedly, it is said that a law is made that you can't buy certain commodities below MSP at any point of time.
If it is mandated that even the private sector has to buy minimum at this price, that will be a disaster and anti-farmer. Think of any situation when there is a surplus produce of any commodity, and that happens in most of the commodities at the harvest time. And the market, if it has to clear, if there is a surplus, supply exceeding demand, the price has to go down to clear the market. Now, if you say that the private sector has to pay minimum this threshold price, and below that they can't buy, then the market will not clear, and all the surplus, either the government will have to take over, or farmer will be left high and dry with the surplus. There will be no buyers. So at the end of the round, the farmer will suffer because of that legality. If the government wants to buy, it depends upon how much resources government has. Government can always go ahead in wheat and rice they are buying. Let them buy 23 commodities, 30%, 40% of the produce, and let's see. They will face the music of how much resources are needed and what sort of massive inefficiency and corruption is in the system. In case of wheat and rice, the costs of procurement, stocking, and distribution is 40% on top of MSP. Remember this. And then you will be buying from the same small and marginal farmers and adding this 40% cost and then giving it back through the public distribution system. Because if the MSPs are high and your economic cost after adding all these procurement incidentals and stocking and all that is high, the market will not support that. So you will have to unload at a lower price in the market. And that means more and more subsidies. And we know what subsidies have already done in the system. And at the end of the round, government has to manage its kitty. In 2021, the food subsidy, which is primarily wheat and rice, was almost 30%, 31% of the net revenue, tax revenue of the union government. Now, if 23 commodities are procured and then unloaded at a lower price, you can imagine what will happen. And the union government's budget resources are extremely limited from that point of view. So to me, that is not feasible. If they do it, they will commit a big blunder and they will realize that over a period of time.
Right. Now, coming to the question of subsidies, as you said in the last budget, in this budget, and also in the forthcoming budget, will be a bigger issue. And one big factor is that our distribution of extra grains through Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Second is the fertilizer subsidies. Both of them have exceeded massively. Before coming back to the question of how to rationalize them, what do you think will be the trajectory of subsidies in the coming financial year in 22-23? Do you think our free distribution of food grains will continue, or the burden will continue in case of food, or also in case of fertilizer? Do you think the international markets are like that it will have to be at a more subsidy as compared to the previous years?
You know, it's very unfortunate that instead of investing in R&D or in extension, which is the right way to go ahead for agriculture, our political democratic system moves by throwing more and more of doles, subsidies. It was in 2013, the UPA government was in a last-ditch battle to appease the consumers by giving them, wheat and rice at 2 rupees, 3 rupees a kg. When rice today is costing the government almost 40 rupees a kg, you want to sell at 3 rupees or 2 rupees. And there is a massive leakage in the system because the system is geared towards that. So you can't help it. And we know how our governance is so loose. So given all that, the poor, whether you want to give it literally free food to 67% of population, when you're even multiple poverty index, multidimensional poverty index, if that is at 25% or less than that, you can have 30% population covered. So either you reduce the coverage under the National Food Security Act from 67% to say 40% or even 30% today, or you increase the issue price and link it to the economic cost. So at least half of that has to be recovered. So economic cost, if it is 40 rupees, then the price of rice in the public distribution system can be say 20 rupees a kg rather than 3 rupees a kg. Otherwise, the government will go bust in terms of resources, eating all the resources, and that's not the best way to help even the poor. It's not sustainable. And on top of that, now if fertilizer subsidy, urea in particular, more than 75%, 80% is the subsidy, and with the price in the international market of gas having gone up or urea prices having gone up, it's a hot potato for the government because of the mood in the system of the farming lobby. But it's going to cost the government at least 1,30,000 crores or so in the coming year. It's already crossing all the budgetary allocation for that in the previous year. So I feel that there will be a pressure on the government resources They may not be able to reform the fertilizer subsidy, but there is scope on the food subsidy front if they can at least contain the coverage in terms of what percentage of population to be covered, or increase the issue price, because the Food Security Act allows after 3 years it could have been increased. So even if it is increased from say 3 rupees to 10, 15, 20 rupees a kg, government can garner enough resources to fund the fertilizer subsidy on the other side. But if it is a loose election gimmick, everything free, well, there are limits to that, and those limits are fast approaching.
Right. In case of fertilizer subsidies, what can be the reforms be taken? One, direct benefit transfer is a system which a lot of people have been talking about, and there has been a system that why don't you give this money directly into the hands of the farmers instead of routing it through the companies? Do you think that this is the right time to attempt it now that at one point of time last year we have cleared all the dues, we have made the balance sheet completely clear for the fertilizer companies. Now, is it a time to move forward to give them directly?
No, that would be great if they do it, that instead of giving it to the companies, make the system market oriented, and whatever you want to give it directly to the farmers' accounts. But whether it will be done, I doubt it seriously. Time is too short. You have to prepare the ground for it for a long period, and convince the farmers also on that front, because our opposition parties, you increase even the urea price by 5% and you will see hangama in the parliament. This is most irresponsible behavior, and it's unfortunate. Populism is killing the economy, and we have to find better solutions that are much more efficient economically, and also pro-farmer. Farmers do need a better deal, but the instruments that are being used, whether it is the fertilizer subsidy, highly subsidized urea pricing, or it is the food subsidy on the other hand, these are not the right instruments, because they are extremely expensive and distorting the markets much more. Income approach, directly transferring, you called it direct benefit transfer to farmers for the fertilizer subsidy, and also to the consumers for the food subsidy, are much better instruments than the current practices.
In case of direct income transfer, we have the PM Kisan as one of the instruments, right? And there is a database also of the amount of farmers that we have through PM Kisan who actually do tilling. Whether they have own land or don't own land, that's a different question which can be tackled later. But through the instrument of PM Kisan, can we do a system? Is it possible to give the fertilizer subsidy as well? So also electricity power, as many people, we all know that it's in the state domain, it is very difficult to reform those, and giving them direct subsidies is very difficult because states are the main players there. But at least in case of fertilizer, it can be done. The PM Kisan should be some kind of linked to some kind of reforms in somewhere, right?
Sure. In fact, I would say all the input subsidies need to be clubbed together, whether of the center or the states, and they have to be transferred directly to the farmers' accounts. And that needs good preparation, but it can be done. The issue of tenant versus owner can also be tackled if you have a proper land recording system. In fact, the farmers, most of the small and marginal farmers also get food subsidy. Now, most of them are also producing rice and getting from the government. So first they want to sell it to the government. It's most foolish thing that first you buy from the same farmers, and then after adding 40% costs, you give it back to the same farmers. Why don't you ask them whether you like to have cash directly and give them, instead of incurring 40% cost over that, over MSP, why don't you give 20 or 30% to those farmers as food subsidy also, those who are in that list? And most of the small and marginal farmers are in the list of food subsidy also. So then linking all these subsidies and the accounts with Aadhaar, you would know which households are getting how much from different types of subsidies. And that is a much, much better system rather than a system of leakages, corruption, and market distorting system that we have right now.
So, coming back to the issue of marketing reforms, I mean, one big factor was one big attempt was made in the last few years. Now, what we have seen in the last 4 5 months is a complete turnaround of the way the things were going. Right, from one extreme to other extreme, we have moved from opening up the markets. We have now banned futures. We have imposed all sorts of stock limits. We have brought newer items into the Essential Commodities Act to impose stock limits on soya meal now. So now we have stock limits on other items. We have increased the import deadlines. So are we moving from one part of the part of the segment to completely different form of this thing? Is it a complete turnaround in approach now? And is it
Well,
very
I won't say complete turnaround, but that's where the government loses its own credibility. And my problem is that the people who are running the show, I doubt whether they understand how market economies function. At the drop of a hat, suddenly, oh, some price rise here. What is the food inflation today? 2%, 3%. Overall, your CPI index is less than the threshold point of RBI. And at that, you are banning all the futures, suspending for 1 year. And, at the drop of a hat, you will even ban exports of agricultural commodities. That only shows that those at the helm of affairs do not have a clue how the market economies function. And this knee-jerk reaction shows the hollowness of the policy and therefore loses its own credibility. If they can't ensure this, do you expect the government to do marketing reform? These are the ABC of marketing reforms. If you have to be futuristic, you have to look towards the future prices. And when you ban all this, you are killing the messenger. And without any alarming thing, if edible oil prices are high, they are because of the international markets. Please study what is causing all this inflationary pressure, if at all, in certain commodities. And when they don't understand anything, they start beating about the bush. Oh, trader, hoarder, this. The biggest hoarder is the government itself, who is sitting on massive stocks of grains at the cost of the country. So it's a pity that government economists don't speak, and the bureaucrats who don't have the domain expertise make policies, or the politicians who don't understand, unfortunately, the system of how to run economy.
I would also like to understand in this case of the marketing reforms that you were talking. Now, many people are saying that this should now go back to the states, and we have done with this experiment long time back. In 2003, we have been asking the states to do the reforms, and the reforms, as we all know, that it has been done in whatever manner is convenient to the state. Some items are brought out, some items haven't brought out, and there is still a lot of bottlenecks there. So giving back to the states is an option to do these reforms, or do we need another structure or another model to work this out?
If you have to do pan-India reforms, you have to have a structure, something on the lines of GST. So there has to be a better consultative process through which the center and the states can come together and work out a viable solution. Certain states like Maharashtra had already gone ahead. Contract farming is already there, and private mandis are already there, and there is a number of states that have gone, including even in Punjab. Contract farming exists, and Bhartis have been doing business, and the government had given them land in Ladowal. Everybody knows those things. But nowadays, it's a state subject. Why the center should interfere? If it is a state subject, why the center should be announcing MSP? Let it be a duty of the states, and let them have their own MSP and procure, and within 2 years they will come to know how it can drain their resources, and they will forget about MSP. So let the states take care of the MSP business, let the states take care of their PDS system. Government should give them money, whatever they are spending at present on PDS or on procurement system, to the states under a criteria based on production poverty and or whatever criteria Niti Aayog can come up with. Distribute that, and the central government should wash its hands away from it and let the states deal with it. When it is center doing, every state is shouting, oh, do this, do that. When they will have to do within 6 months, they will realize and they will get over that phobia. So
right. So finally, on the conclusion, I would like to ask you one small question. Overall, in the budget, now that we are approaching another election, it will be 22-23. Do you think the government and the overall budget trajectory will be more towards populism and less towards reforms and modest thing?
Of course. Our elections means populism, nothing else. Right now, left and right, every chief minister is announcing free power as if they are distributing their own wealth. Somebody is trying to promise e-scooties, and somebody is giving all these smartphones and whatnot, as if it is their personal wealth that they are distributing. The fact of the matter is, it is our tax money. Hard-earned tax money that is being thrown. It's a simple, doles for polls, doles for votes, and the election commission is sleeping. Literally, all these things should be banned. Nobody should be allowed to give any freebies. This is bribe, nothing short of that. It's pure bribe that our politicians give to the voters. Promising all these things out of the sky. Let them distribute their own wealth first and then touch our tax money for any meaningful purpose.
Right. I think that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you to Dr. Gulati for such an enriching discussion, and we are really grateful to you for sharing your views on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.